When Steve Ruh was 7 years old, riding in the tractor with his dad, he knew he wanted to be a farmer. So when his father retired in 1994, Steve was ready to step in and take the reins. And even though he's running the same farm where he grew up, he's realized that agriculture in the information age is a very different business. In this episode, we talk with Steve as he begins his first season using the Climate FieldView platform. We'll hear his first impressions, his expectations, and see firsthand the impacts digital tools can have on a farm. Steve, what's your first memory of growing up on the farm? What are some of the images that come back when you think about that?
Probably growing up on a dairy farm, as I did, feeding the bottle calves. That was probably my first job at 4 and 5 years old. Dad would put a little milk in the bottle, and it was my job of feeding the baby calves.
How old were you when the cows left?
That's a good story. I think my father was sorry they left, but it was kind of a blessing in disguise for me. My love wasn't in the livestock, but it was certainly in production farming. And I was 24 years old at the time, so I kind of talked my dad into retiring and retiring the cows all in one swoop.
What about watching your dad at work made you want to be a farmer?
Probably just being outside and being independent and living around a great group of neighbors that we're all doing the same thing. That's very unique in this business. And it was just the right thing to do, and I've enjoyed it ever since.
Did you ever consider any other career outside this business of farming, either before you started farming or maybe even since you started farming?
You know, I did. While I was working for my father, I had the opportunity to work for some local construction folks in the area here, and to get a little taste of what it's like to work for somebody else, not alone, just your father. And it was a great opportunity for me. I'm glad he let me do that for a few years, but ultimately I came back to the farm, and it was certainly the right choice.
Were there any things that your dad did that you recall that maybe really helped prepare you for this business of farming? Anything that you saw him do or anything that he imparted to you verbally?
Probably his patience. I am not a very patient person, and patience and hard work has certainly served him well through his farming career, and I probably have picked that up the most and installed in my farming career.
But is there any recollection you have of how he drew upon technology in his business?
Well, from when he started milking cows in the mid-50s, and basically the milk machine was almost a new invention then, and to go from the dairy business to when he retired of automated milk machines, I mean, I'm sure his eyes were obviously wide open and probably couldn't believe the technology from when he started milking to when he quit. And on the other hand, in my perspective, with more production agriculture, in the late 80s and mid 90s, yield monitors were just starting to come out. Accuracy was pretty poor compared to today's standards. It would give you a ballpark idea what you were doing, but to incorporate what we can do today with today's technology and how precise we can be with our seed and especially fertilizer, it's amazing from when I started 20-some years ago to today.
How would you describe yourself as a producer, Steve, in terms of, are you a guy out there on the bleeding edge, or do you sort of hang back a little bit and wait for other producer responses and reactions to new technology?
I would definitely be the one that hangs back a little bit and gets real familiar with something before they dive in. I just kind of tend to hang back, read a lot, talk to other producers who have been involved, and just kind of take it from there. And I'm looking forward to this step for this year for me.
Reflect back on how you used to collect data on your farm.
You're pretty standard. In the fall, we would get done harvesting, and I would take the disc out of the Pro 600 and give it to the crop scout, and she would make copies for me to put in my file. And we would learn the hot spots in the field, the not so great spots, and we would kind of more or less physically match them up with the soil samples and the fertilizer data that we obtained with the soil samples, and we would kind of more or less manually set up the program for the following year as far as fertility and everything.
When did you realize the potential of Climate FieldView? And was there a particular aha moment when you saw this and you thought, oh yeah, this needs a little additional investigation?
I guess basically reading about it, and when some of the folks approached me about it, and they looked at my data that I had collected over the last 4 or 5 years and said, you know, we can take that and just make it a lot more precise. You know, you got to keep not reinventing the wheel, but in this business, things are changing so fast that you need to keep up, and for me, this was time to take that next step and get it even more precise.
How could Climate FieldView help you at planting time specifically?
Climate FieldView will certainly help me match up varieties with soil types, and that's something that traditionally we probably never thought of or thought a lot of.
It's going to be interesting at the end of this season, isn't it, to look back and look at the data. And you've collected data over a number of seasons. This will be all included in your Climate FieldView to examine, correct?
Yes, the Climate FieldView will, collect your data probably, quicker than I traditionally did it myself at the end of the season. Now I don't have to wait till the end of the season. As you're harvesting through the field, it's collecting the data and it's shooting it right down to your iPad. It will be at your fingertips 24/7. And you can make maybe some decisions in the fall that maybe you would have waited till when the harvest season was over.
In that Ruh lineage, there's another generation coming behind you. Talk a little bit about whether you think someday your offspring might farm and what you'd like them to pick up from you.
You know, my son Sullivan, he's 6 right now, enjoys riding in the combine with me. I mean, he just eats every bit of it up. But for him, it's kind of fun watching as he sees everything going on in the field. It's almost like a video game for him. He already understands a lot more about it than I probably ever did at 6 or 7 years old.
Even before the first season's seed is planted, Steve Ruh is taking his first steps into the world of digital agriculture. Armed with his iPad, his expectations, and Climate FieldView's customer support network, he's ready for anything 2017 can throw at him. We wish Steve the best as we head back out on the road in search of more stories next time on Freeways to Farms.